All right, so first project for today is get the old pump rebuilt. Got the top bushing out already. The new top bushing, this guy right here, for some reason, I don't know if it's intentional or what, but it is machined undersize and it does not fit the shaft. It's about 6 thou under. So we got to get it pressed in, and then McMaster Carr had a McMaster Carr had a 495 reamer, which will give us the running clearance we need with the shaft. So we got to run a reamer. We got to get the bushings in and then ream them to size. So Dad's working on that. I'm gonna get the pump housing cleaned up. He's making a tool right now to punch that bottom bushing out, and then we'll be able to use the same stuff to reinstall the new one. Well, the new one will be, or the top one will be easy. You just put it in the press and push it in, but the bottom one, we're gonna have a tool to press in. The bottom one is actually a little oversized, and by the time you press it in the bore, it should come down to on size. So, well, on size for the running clearance, not on size for the shaft, then it sees up. But, so, that's where we're at. All right, so pump's all back to, or the housing's good to go. Bushings are in, board, everything fits. Fun fact, apparently these sprockets are not supposed to be press fit, because now that everything's all cleaned up and on size, they just kind of slide right on, which, in all honesty, makes more sense than press fit, because, well, first off, if it was press fit, there, other than for, I guess, locating purposes, there's really no reason to have a snap ring down here. Which, if it's just slides on like it does like this, then the only reason the snap ring keeps the shaft from falling out the bottom of the pump, which makes more sense. And the drive gear on top is got a slight press fit, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have both of these press fit and have the thing in a bind So it'd make more sense to have this or this float, and it would make more sense to have the actual pump gear itself floating. So that took us a little bit by surprise, but because at first we were like, okay, well, did they match gears to the shaft? So I went down and got the gear that came, because this is the shaft out of the pump I bought for parts. And I got the gear that came off the shaft, and it just slid right on. And then measured both shafts, and both shafts measure the same, both gears measure the same, and the bore of the gear is not going to be worn. So anyway, I need this stuff. I don't know if I even got the... Oh yeah, we're good. I didn't know if I had the camera where we could see anything. Dad was actually talking, because we got basically a complete pump for parts to match stuff up. Oh, that's real nice, Clark. We got this shaft. We got 2 sets of bushings to copy, because you can't get the shaft anymore. I got the last lower bushing that Agco had, that at least was in the system. They couldn't find it at any other dealers. And I can't remember what the status of the upper bushing was, but needless to say, shafts and bushings for this are the problem. So, and Dad was thinking, because these shafts, I mean, there's basically nothing to them. You could throw these things in a machining center, and it'd probably only take 30 minutes a piece to turn them out. Dad was almost thinking about getting this thing rock weld and see what kind of material it's made out of and whatnot, and getting one drawn up and seeing how much it would cost to have like 25 or 30 of these made up, and possibly look into making some bushing sets as well. Obviously the bushing sets aren't going to do anybody any good unless they have or know somebody with machining capability, because you got to press them into the housing and then bore them to size, or ream them to size, whatever you want to do. And so you got to be aware of that. But basically with these pumps, you only got 3 options. You do what we did and get parts and have the shaft chrome to ground and put bushings in it and machine them and take the long way around rebuilding the pump. You put it back together the way it was and hope that it works, which the way this pump was worn might have been fine, might have not. Or you shit can the pump and go out and you buy the $1,100 brand new aftermarket one. Which is what we had to do in the 1955, because not only was the shaft and everything ate up, the housing was ate up because of all the sand that we found in the oil pan. But, so that was kind of Dad's thought for the day, was seeing the feasibility of having some of these pump components copied and made up. And when you put these together, you want to make sure that the wear on the gears is mating up. So like on this gear, you got this side of the tooth is worn, and on this gear, this side of the tooth is worn. So you want to make sure that the mating surfaces match up. You don't want to have a worn surface mating up with an unworn surface. Now, it doesn't really matter if you invert the gears so that they're driving off of the good side of the tooth. You just want to make sure that the teeth are mating up the way they came apart. That way you don't get any funky wear patterns. And then as for this gasket, which is apparently well, that's different. Huh. Well, I'm gonna have to make a gasket for this son of a bitch. Because that ain't right. I wonder what pump that's supposed to fit, because it's got this menagerie of shit going on. Huh. Well, that sucks. Luckily, I can use this one, and this one's got enough of it right to copy. Basically, all I gotta do is, between these two holes, make it straight and not put this dork with the extra hole in it, but I wonder what. I wonder if this is the gasket for the pump that you buy aftermarket. Interesting. Okay, so that's the gasket they sent, and that's what it's supposed to look like. Which this one would have worked if it was a thicker cross section right here, because when you lay it on there, that section of the gasket falls inside the pump housing, and there's nothing right here where this hole is. Otherwise, you could have made this one work other than that little tidbit. So, anyhow, crisis averted. Luckily, we had some gasket material that was the right thickness, because the gasket material on this is what sets your clearance for the gears. So if the gasket is too thick, which I don't know if you can get any thinner than what they got there, but if it's any thicker, you're going to have too much clearance, and you're not going to build any pressure, because it's just going to bypass the gears. So, I'm going to run down to the barn and grab some new lock washers. Right quick. Okay, so I'm going to have to do a little doctoring on the drive gear. Once I got everything together and got it fit and got the pinhole to where it would work with that gear, because I got to take the gear that came out of the tractor, but that gear doesn't match this shaft, so things are getting a little goofy here. But they want 4 to 8 thousandths of clearance between the bushing and the gear, and basically once I got it in there and got the pin in, I was running 0 clearance. That would lock the pump up. That would at the very least break the pump, and at the most break the cam. And if the cam, Brad, yeah, we're not gonna do that. So we got to open this. We got to open that clearance up a little bit. I put it in here, just put it in, locked her down, indicated it. It's only got a half a thou run out. As far as like this on the face, we're plenty within to face it off. So I gotta put tools in here and take a cut off of that, and it was at 1 inch 460, like just shy of 1 inch 460. So I need to take it down to like 1 inch 455. Should get me the clearance I need. So put that in, take a cut real quick, see where we end up. Okay, so I had to wait for Dad to get home, because this is my first time ever cutting anything this hard, so he had to do some schooling for me. He set me up with a ceramic tip. It's not actually metal. It's metal, but it's not. It's ceramic with some extra shit added into it. But because this is a hardened gear, carbide won't cut it. But anyway, went in, took about 5.5 thou off, and that basically put it at 0 running clearance. So we were actually in a bind when I had it put together the first time, which this is where having a brand new shaft would come in handy. Because if you read in the manual in the pump overhaul section, back when these things were new and you bought a new pump shaft, they actually came blank, and you pressed your gear on, set your clearance, and you drilled the hole where you needed it to be. Here we're trying to work with a shaft and everything out of a different pump with new bushings and everything, so the hole's not exactly in the right spot, so we're having to do this to make it work right. But anyway, so I came in, got to make this cut now, which should set the clearance. So, maybe if I set you right. Oh, hey, no. There we go. Apparently that's aluminum. Touching whatever's underneath it. So, and this ceramic cut's crazy good. I mean, it almost feels like you ground it. It's so smooth. But Dad's explained to me that if you go to try to cut cold roll with this, you'll break the tool just because of the way it works. But anyway, that's cut number 2. So far we took about 10 thou off, so we will see where this gets us. Hopefully that gets us our 4 thousandths of running clearance, hopefully. Alright, so that got us somewhere between 4 and 5 thou running clearance. A 4 thousandths feeler gauge slips right in. A 5 thou kind of, if you work it, will kind of halfway go in there, but not all the way. So we're perfect there. So now we can just get the plunger and everything put back in, and we are golden. This is a new plunger spring. And then we took the adjuster screw out 9 turns from flush, if I remember right. Yep, because it was basically down to as far as it could go and catch that second hole. So or was it 9? No, it had to have been 9 turns from all the way out. Because as coarse as that's threaded, 9 turns from all the way. Okay, so half 1, half 2, half 3, half 4, half 5, half 6, half 7, half 8, half 9. Okay, so now you just put a cotter pin through here, and then you slip your pickup tube or pickup float in there, and there's a cotter pin goes in this hole. Holds that guy in. I popped the bottom cover off, made sure there wasn't any shit in there, so the pickup's all nice and clean. So with that, we are good. I'll get it slapped in the block real quick. And should be good to put the oil pan back on. Now, something to note, this is a diesel, so it doesn't matter. But on the Waukesha's at least, the distributor, or on these, you put the tack drive in place of the distributor. But if this was a gas block and you had a distributor there, on the Waukesha, the distributor is driven off of the oil pump, unlike, like, say, a 350 Chevy, where the oil pump is driven off the distributor. So when if this was a gas block, you'd have to time the oil pump, and basically all you do is you'd have to offset this a tooth, basically, and when you slide this up into its bore, you got to get it to where when the gear turns to fully engaged into the cam, the drive slot in the oil pump drive gear is parallel with the cam. But this is a diesel, doesn't matter, just shove it in there, because the only thing you're driving is the tach. But if it was a gas, that's how you time an oil pump and a gasser. Okie dokie. So oil pump's back in, pan's on, pretty much everything is on that needs to go on before we can set this in the frame, other than obviously the 3-speed, but that's not going to go on until the tractor's up here. So but Dad's got one more day welding pipes. We're gonna wait till tomorrow afternoon when I get off of work to bring the tractor up. And the last thing I got to do before the motor can go in is that seal right there. That's for the transmission input shaft. I want to change that. It doesn't leak now, and I want to make sure that it doesn't leak after we get the motor in, because I don't want to have to pull that motor again. And then I got, this is my 12-volt receptacle that I'm going to wire in to run the planter monitor and everything. Found this on eBay for 13 bucks. It's Chinesium crap, but it was the only one I could find that had a dust boot to go with it. It's kind of surprising how difficult it is. I mean, there was only like 2 or 3 different styles on eBay. You'd think that this would be something fairly common, but I was getting to the point where I was wondering if I was going to have to go to a junkyard and pop one out of a car. I'd have probably, if I'd have done that, I'd have probably got one that wasn't Chinesium, or was at least a better grade of Chinesium, but I guess we'll see how that works. But this is all the leftover stuff I got that doesn't get used. Oil pump, or water pump gasket, because I already overhauled that water pump a while back. That's the rear main seal for if you didn't use the repair sleeve, which we did. Umbrella seals for the pump. Oh, I need that little copper washer. That's for the drain plug. That felt is for an older style 310. That gasket right there is for the crankcase breather, which we did not take off, so I didn't bother replacing it. That oil pump gasket that don't work. And then this is a case of a spare part that didn't even belong in the engine to begin with. This right here is a hillbilly, we ain't got no oil pressure, so we're gonna make our own fix. This came out with that plunger and spring. They had stuffed this in, apparently because the bottom end was so loose on this, or the oil pump was shot, or whatever the problem was, that they were having low oil pressure issues. My guess is because the bottom end was all hammered out. They had stuffed that in there to increase the spring pressure on that plunger to bump the oil pressure up. And apparently they took enough stroke out of it that when I took it apart, the spring had actually, like, it was shaped like a C when I pulled it out of the hole. And then just sitting in the bag, I had all the plugs and everything that I took out in a bag, or all the old gallery plugs and relief valve plungers and everything in a bag with just stuff out of the old galleries. And just sitting in that bag, the spring broke in half. It was in one piece when I took it out, and I didn't move or didn't do anything with it. And when I went to pull it back out of the bag, it was broken in half. Luckily, you can still get that spring brand new, and I just had one ordered to begin with. But so yeah, that doesn't even belong in the motor. So, and I got the tack drive in. If anybody's overhauling one of these, there's a little seal in the bottom of that tack drive, and for some damn reason, it's just lip seal. It's only like yay big around, and it's got a hole in it the size of about a pencil, because that's all the bigger that tack shaft is. But for some damn reason, they do not send that seal in the overhaul kit for the engine. They send you there's a little gasket that when you clamp this down that keeps, so oil can't come out from around the housing, but they don't send that damn seal. So if you overhaul one of these, specify that you want that seal and order it separate, because I highly recommend you replace that. I already did the one in this engine after when we first got the tractor, because you would be surprised. This is not really pressure lubed, it's splash lubed. You would be surprised how much oil will fight gravity and how much of a mess that thing will make if that seal goes out. It will have the entire side of this engine wet. It took me forever to figure out where that oil was coming from, and finally tracked it down to that tack drive. So anyhow, I might just make this its own video and do putting the engine back in and whatnot. I don't know. They're not really related, because we finally got the engine done, and then we're going to set it back in the frame and start putting stuff back together. So yeah, we'll make this the final engine assembly video, and we'll catch you guys tomorrow dropping the engine back in the frame. So, I guess a couple points I want to hit that have been brought up in previous assembly videos here. Had a couple people mention that they had never seen anybody, or never seen a set of pistons installed without lubricating the cylinders. Well, I got 2 words for you: chrome rings. Actually 3 words: chrome faced rings. It does not specify at all anywhere in the manual to lubricate those pistons when you put them in the liners. Those rings are so damn hard to seat in. It took us forever to get the rings to seat in 1955. I mean, forever. That was partly due to the fact that we were running Lucas fuel treatment, and you don't want to do that on a fresh engine either, because apparently that stuff will stop the rings from seating, because we quit putting that in there and the rings finally seated. But chrome face rings, you don't want to lube them putting them in the cylinders, because any extra lubricant you put in there is going to make them damn rings seat that much harder. Just let them get splash lubed when you start the motor. It's going to be fine. They're not going to gulk because they're chrome faced. What else? There were 3 things, and that was one of them. The paint. This is actually not down to bare casting. Actually, the block itself actually isn't a whole lot different than what it was when I took it in, as far as the amount of paint still left on it. But it's took it down to primer. This kind of brownish yellow primer is what Oliver used on all of our casting. So while there's no paint on there, it's still not a bare block. It's just mostly primer now. It ate all the paint off. But yeah, not painting the tractor. Don't want to paint the tractor, so I'm not painting the blocks. I don't want the block to stand out like a sore thumb. You get it back in the frame, get all the sheet metal around it, it'll look like it just, that's the way it belongs. What was the last thing? There was one more thing, and I cannot remember for the life of me what it is now. I don't know. I'm sure I'll think of it at some point. But those are the 2 things I wanted to hit. Yeah. So anyway, I guess that's enough of me talking. So I guess that's it for this one, and we'll catch you guys tomorrow. I'm dropping the engine back in the frame, finally, like 10 weeks later.